Hello, how you doing? This is Neil from masterpaintingnow.com, and I have a tutorial here for you guys. It's really just to help out a student of mine on Udemy, and they're asking, this is their drawing on the left here. They're asking how can they make their 3/4 view females better. And if you haven't taken my anatomy course, this is learning how to draw from your imagination, and it's quite difficult. The 3/4 view is a difficult one to do in master, especially from your imagination. But I'm going to give you some tips here to help you with that. So this is the drawing I did on the right here. So the first thing you want to think about when they're in 3/4 view is that you're seeing side planes and you're also seeing front planes. So the side planes, right here on the head, for example, that's a side plane. You have this whole part here. I'm going to just cut right through the figure. All that right there is a side plane, like so. Then it comes down, you're seeing all this side plane of the leg here. Right, so you're seeing part of the buttocks there connect to the leg and the hip. And you're seeing a lot of the inner side plane of the leg here, like this. Right, you're seeing side plane of the deltoid and the arm like that. You're seeing inner side plane of the arm like this. You got to think about you're seeing side planes and you're seeing front planes. That's the first thing. The next thing is the head maybe should be a little bit smaller, and then this right here should maybe come down a little bit further, like something like this here, and that's where the shoulder should start. The center line kind of curves, out a little bit, and then it kind of comes back like this. So the crotch should be something more like this, like right about there. Another thing is the whole thing is too skinny, like especially for a female, if you want to make it look more feminine, you got to add that kind of hourglass figure. But the whole thing is just a little bit too thin. So you want to, come out with the rib cage and think about it more like out here, like this, and it comes like that. So you have this side plane right here. It's almost like you're forgetting the side plane there. And then you kind of want to come out. You want to kind of have this, hourglass kind of figure shape here, like a mini skirt. And just think about that, and then to go, okay, well, this is the side plane of it, like that. But that's like more of the basic shape you want. Then you're going to come in with the legs like that. And it depends on how far away the legs are spread or together, how it's going to look from this. We're kind of just doing a neutral pose. Another thing is that the breast, you got to think about the breast being on a line here. So the lines down here for the knees are kind of coming like this because of perspective. And then as you get more here, the eye line is somewhere right about here probably where it starts to get more straight. And then as you come up, it starts going like that, right? And so the lines are like this, right? So you can see how the lines here are kind of going like this to a vanishing point, but the lines here are going like this. So you have basically like that, right? And they're going to a vanishing point somewhere, and that means that the center plane, you have to have a horizon line somewhere here where these lines are eventually going to converge, right? That's how you think about it. So you're drawing the figure within this area, and so anything above this line, the lines are going to be kind of going this way. Anything below that line, the lines are going to be going like this, right? Just think about perspective. And so the nipples need to fall along. Let's say this one's correct, like this. And this breast needs to come out a little bit further, right? Because remember, this whole thing needs to be wider. And the breast from the 3/4 view, your breasts kind of fall to the side. So if you're looking at the breast from the top view, let's say this, and the head would be somewhere like that, the breasts have like a 45-degree angle like this to the nipples from the back of the spine here. And so the breast actually go like this. Actually, I should make this whole thing rounder because it's, the breasts kind of go like that, right? If you think about it, so because it's on a sphere, right? So think about you're on a, not a sphere, but you're on a, like this, right? You're on a curve. So you're on part of a cylinder. Think about this upper body as a cylinder. From the side view, remember, the body is really skinny like this. From the front view, it's more like that, right? So you see the difference. So let's say this right here was the top-down view, and this is like where the neck attaches somewhere in here, and you got the spine back here like this. Draw these 45-degree lines or 45-degree angle like that, and that's where the nipples are. So the breast fit like this. I should maybe make it a little bit bigger, like that, right? Now what's important to think about here is that you have a lot of the breast, see like that much of the breast there and there is attaching to the side plane. See how as this curve starts to curve back around, part of the breast is connecting to that side plane, which means part of the breast is connecting or visible from the side. So this all right here is the side plane. So you start the breast from back here, see that? Because that's where you have this part of the side plane. So it starts on the front plane mostly. Most of the breast is on the front plane, but part of it wraps around. And you can actually see this, you know, like if you kind of view a woman from the side or kind of even from the back side, you can kind of see how the breast is kind of wrapping around. So like, let's say you had, trying to get a part here, like something like this here. Let's say that's like the back, and you're seeing a little bit of this side front plane here, like that. You might see the breast just a little bit like that, kind of wrapping around to the, you know, to the side like that. Anyway, hopefully that makes sense. So the breast needs to come out here more, right? So if this breast comes out here more like this, then and then that middle line, that's where the breast, see this center line right here? The breasts need to be on each side of that center line. They're not going to overlap each other unless they're like being pushed together or something like that. And then so you want to kind of draw this kind of angle here. So you want to make sure that this is still the nipple. So you got to come, this is the bottom. You still want that to match on each side, and then come up like that. So now the nipples are matching and the bottom is matching, right? So that would look more like this. All right, let's go ahead and kind of figure out how to draw this now. Let's see, what did I? Yeah, I can get rid of that. And then we'll move this over. All right, let's go ahead and draw. So the first thing I like to do is kind of, you know, just draw like a straight line, because you know like that's gonna be pretty close to like this. If you think about the straight line right here, let's say this is the straight line. You know the crotch and everything is gonna fit a little bit on the inside of that, but that would be like pretty much where the breasts are gonna be. And so basically think about that, and then we'll just make the halfway line still be the same, which will be right about there. And this will be the top. And we'll have the same for the head here. I don't want to do measurements, so we're just going to kind of go like this and just kind of make it match here. And we'll make the belly button something like that. So if the head's going to fit in here, let's just kind of do an oval for now. But what I like to do often is I like to do like a circle almost here. Kind of an oval though, because we're viewing a little bit of the side plane. Remember, from the side plane, the head is more oval like this. Right, so that'd be more from the side plane. And from the front, it's more like this. So from the 3/4 view, it's kind of a mix between those. And so if I have this right here, going to be my, and then I'm going to put the jaw and everything, attach it onto this. Like so. Just need a basic shape. Kind of come up a little bit more. Not quite right, but I can fix it. And then, you know, think about like how far you want this to go down. You know, now you got to think about angles here. So if we have the angle of the collarbone here, then you're gonna have the angle of the breast are gonna be the same, like that, you know. Anyway, so let's go ahead and just kind of drop down the neck here like this, and then the neck back here like this. So you got to think about the muscles, right? If you have this center point, let's say I want this to be my center point somewhere like this, and it's going to come out like this, because that's where and then it kind of comes back in, and maybe about right about here, like that, kind of tapers in like this. So that's to be the center line of my 3/4 view. You have these muscles here that come up like this behind the ear. Boom, and then you have the other one right there. So I think about those muscles. Then I think about the trapezius muscles and where they attach, and that's what gives me this overall shape like that. The next thing is I want to think about my rib cage and how that's going to fit into it. Now, one thing we can do is we can take here to here, and we know that if we kind of divide that in half, like divide this in half, right? We know that's about where the bottom of the rib cage would be. About like that. And so now I want to come out here, and I know that this side here is going to be much bigger than this side. So let's go ahead and do this side first. Just kind of start to think about this egg shape that's going to make the rib cage. Something about like so. Like that, right? And that same shape is going to come out like this, but it's going to be wider on this side from that center line. About twice as wide, because we have to see some of the side plane and the front plane. And then we're going to come up about halfway to make our crest of the rib cage, about like so. And then the breast, they pretty much fall down to like this, 7th rib down here. And they kind of start where this, right where this is at. That's usually where I kind of start the breast. So I'm going to kind of do this one first. We'll kind of follow that same kind of rib cage line. We'll kind of come out like that. And then we'll kind of come up like this. I don't want to go up too high because I need to have the spacing like so. And then I'm going to start this one right here at the line. And remember this kind of angled line here needs to go through the nipples of both breasts. And so this bottom line has to be the same here. It's going to be at a slight angle like that. It's not going to be exactly horizontal. And we got to bring the breast out here to the side plane of the rib cage a little bit. Like so. Actually, probably be more rounded than that. Like so. Remember, the breasts kind of have this, so from the front view, the breasts kind of have a shape like this, like a heart as it comes up like that. Right? That's the natural shape of breast. If you have natural breasts, they're like that. So they have more of this oval shape right here. And they get, here they're not as bulbous, so here they're more flattened. And as you get more toward this part, this is where they start to get more round. You gotta think about the three-dimensional shape. Think about the forms and what they feel like, in 3 dimensions. So it's kind of so like that, and then we're gonna have the arm, which kind of do oval here, and then I like to. This one's being covered. You got to think about how foreshortening works, right? So when you have the front view, you have this kind of cylinder shape here. Let's just have these basic shapes like this. Let's say these are like kind of like spheres, and then you have, tubes connected to that, cylinders. Right, so when you start to turn this away from us, like this, we'll have this be the center line now. So now we're starting to see some of this, side plane here. So this side here we can see very clearly of the tube, right? It's not being cut off, but this is overlapping now. See that ball is kind of behind, see, because there's overlapping. You got to think about that as things turn, like how things would look in 3 dimensions. And it takes, memorizing basic shapes first and kind of turning them around and stuff. And then you can, from there, start to add anatomy and things like that. Right, so knowing that the breast and the rib cage, and there's this little muscle here, muscle and fat tissue like that, and that's on each side of the breast, which comes, and I think I made the breast a little bit too high, actually, now that I think about it. Instead of redrawing them, I'm just going to lower them a little bit like this. Let's just kind of lower it like that. So there we go, kind of have that piece of fat tissue. It's like fat and muscle. There's the pec muscle that's underneath that. And then you have that same muscle that comes up like this, the pec muscle. That's what gives you that line right there that goes to the arm. And we're going to kind of just draw the basic idea of the deltoid shape here, and then the arm like that. Collarbone is going to come out and kind of start to go back in space like that. And then it's going to attach to the top here, that little bone right here. That's going to give us the arm like this. So that's the deltoid here. And just kind of imagine the arm kind of coming down. Actually, I'm going to make it even smaller, like about like almost comes out straight, and then it kind of comes down like this. And there's going to be that same kind of angle to where the arms attach here, the upper arm, and then you have the lower arm where it's going to kind of go like this. And we'll bring it down something like that. Remember, this is also almost going to be, Actually, I'm just gonna kind of come straight across like that. Cut that arm a little bit shorter. But there, it's almost gonna be horizontal because remember the horizon line on this figure is actually somewhere around this area here. And then from here, all the lines are gonna start going like this now. Oops, I'm at the opposite way, like that. All right, so once you have this part here, then we know, as we did from the front view, we know this kind of comes down like this, and then right about here, where the ribs is, you have this break, and you're gonna have the hips kind of come out, right? So you have this kind of shape. And this is gonna come all the way down to, I'm gonna make sure, hold on, let's make sure this is kind of, no. All right, I just wanna make sure I kind of have that similar over there. We have the same kind of halfway. I'm gonna make this a little bit in like this, actually. There we go. Right, so now we have the hips here, and we have to have this hourglass shape. So think about the hourglass shape, and this is gonna curve back into the legs. And what I like to think about here from this 3/4 view, this might help a little bit, is think about this line kind of extending out like this and kind of making this like kind of shape like that. This kind of like teardrop shape, right? So this line just kind of continues down like that and continues the side, kind of makes a teardrop shape. And then this line right here kind of continues down to the crotch almost like that. And then from the nipple down, you have like this line kind of like this. So if you think about these two lines making this V, it kind of helps, you know, where the belly button and stuff, not the belly button, but like how the shape is going to be. We'll kind of come out and then come in, and then we'll come out again like that, because that's kind of how that part's shaped. Then you have the belly button. I'm going to come out just a little bit past this now. This will be basically like the stomach muscles like that, and then that's about where it ends and comes like this. All right, so that's the basic shape in there. Now it's just in the mannequin. I'm adding a little bit more details here. In the crotch, you got to think about, so if you have this center line right here and that kind of line right there, that's helpful because now you can go from the front view. We know there's this kind of angle like this where it comes up to the highest part of the crest of the legs, kind of like this. And so now we can have the hip kind of comes like this out, that'd be like the hip bone. Then it comes out to like where the leg is going to be like that. And then the leg is going to kind of come out to the widest part. That's where the part of the femur bone right there. And then right about here is like the widest part where the femur bone's coming away. This is like the iliac crest of the hip, like that. Think about that being part of the hip line. And the bone attaches here and comes out like that, right? And then the bone attaches here and comes out like that, right? That's the anatomy we're thinking about from the 3/4 view. And I would see, I'm going to kind of go like out like this a little bit, making the hip structure or the part of the pelvic coming up to like the roundness here of the belly like that. Kind of erase some of this so it kind of I didn't mean to do it like, what am I doing? There we go. Kind of just make it in a little bit like that. Right, so from here we just got to attach the legs. So you got to think about how this right here, part of this is the butt. We're seeing part of the side of the butt here a little bit. And if you think about the anatomy here, you have, first off, you have this kind of the hip structure like this, right? Actually, probably a little bit higher than that. Kind of like that, right? That's like the hip structure. So you got to think about this being like where the hip kind of wraps around, you know, comes like that. And you have the iliac crest coming forward. Then you have this kind of part that protrudes out a little bit. You can see that bump there. And the same thing happens on this side. It kind of comes around here. You can kind of see, you know, the little bump right there like that because it's a little bit lower, about like this because it's like 3/4 view, right? So that's what I'm thinking about. Think about that underlying structure. So from the front view, you have the crotch line and you have this iliac crest coming up and it comes around like this, right? So if you think about this shape, That's like the hips going around the side. This is the bone structure. There's these little parts right here and right here that kind of, you can kind of see that kind of sticks out. And the love handles are above this, and then the legs start below this like that, right? And that's what gives us that shape. So understanding that, then I know that this is part of the love handle right here, and then this right here is part of the hip that kind of comes down, and then it starts to go out like this because of the leg muscles and the butt muscles, right? So it's like, boom. Hopefully that makes sense. So it's like kind of like this kind of shape, and then it's going to kind of come out like that because of the butt and everything. And so this side's kind of clean this up just a little bit here. Have that come down like this, and then you have the hip part right there. That's where that line like this. And then it starts to kind of come down almost. It goes out, and then it kind of comes down. Then it goes out again because now you have the legs. Boom, like that. So another thing you have to consider from the 3/4 view is how the legs overlap each other. Just going to kind of clean some of this up so it looks a little better here. We're sticking to basic shapes right now because we're kind of just doing the mannequin. I don't like that. I'm going to kind of shape all this up. It's kind of just go more like this here. And then we'll have, oops. I don't know why I'm having a hard time following that line. There we go. There we go, like that. And then you can think about this kind of S curve. So remember the leg kind of has this kind of shape right here, like from, it kind of, how do I describe that? It's like, I'm not going to get into all that again. Well, I guess I can. So if you think about the leg, right, you have, let's just go here like this. You have the crotch line here. You have where the legs attach. You have the love handles up here like this. So the belly button's going to be there in the halfway part. The belly button falls like halfway between the love handles. So this right here is like love handles, right? The belly button falls like the halfway line between that. And so when the leg comes out like this here and it attaches to the body and comes out, it has this kind of shape like this part here, and then it kind of comes like that. That's like the shape of the leg, because you have this top muscle here, then you have these kind of the side plane muscle here, which I talk about in my course like that. This kind of like triangle shape, so it kind of has a shape like that when you think about it three-dimensionally. And I show all this and prove it with photos and stuff anyway. My new anatomy course, I'm really going into that kind of stuff and proofs and everything, which I'll have out soon. Now you gotta just follow this leg coming down like this, right? So this leg here is gonna be the easier leg to figure out because we know that it's gonna come in front like this a little bit and then come down, right? So just that basic shape first, and you can have this muscle, remember you have the serratus muscle, or sorry, not serratus, that's these things, the sartorius muscle, which I'm not gonna go into all where it attaches and everything, but well, I guess I can. So in that, when you have this iliac line here and part of that crest of the hip bone, it attaches like right about here. And so then it comes like this, and it has this kind of S curve like that. Then it attaches on the inside of the knee. So we don't see where it attaches because the inside, we're not seeing the inside of the knee. Remember, we're seeing a lot of this side plane here, this side plane, and all this right here is side plane. That's why we're seeing part of the buttocks there. And the same thing with the breast, right? So this right here is technically like, we're seeing some side, almost like a side plane here of the breast, and everything else would be more like, more like the front plane. That's why the breast looks more rounded from this angle here versus a front view. And then we know we have the knee somewhere around here because, and then remember the lines as we go down here start to kind of go like this a little bit. So you want all those lines to kind of match up. So the other knee is going to be like over here, like so. Now this leg right here, because we're in 3/4 view, it's going to be kind of covering a little bit of this leg. Remember, this leg attaches back here from this angle, and so we can't actually see where it's attached because of the butt. Remember, the buttocks is coming back here, and it kind of wraps along and it attaches to the inside of the leg, right? And so that's being covered by this leg because it's being turned this way, away from us, right? And so you can see how the leg starts back here, and it comes down. So we're going to kind of do this S curve here for the sartorius muscle, and then we're going to have that muscle kind of, the butt muscles and everything coming down like that and attaching. Boom, so that'd be the leg. And then we're going to just attach it right here to the knee. Like that. So that part is like hard to figure out when you're first learning because it's hard to kind of visualize how the shapes look in 3D. And so that just takes, draw from imagination, but also draw a lot from life if you can. If you can't draw from life, you can't have a friend or something pose for you in underwear or whatever, then look at photography and stuff. Try to get good 3/4 views. There's a lot of reference material, like on DeviantArt, for example, where it's just people standing in these basic positions, these kind of neutral positions to kind of learn this stuff first, and then you can start looking at more elaborate poses. And so you can see how I added a little bit more anatomy and stuff than I did over here. Here I kept it more basic and simple shapes. Then over here I started to add my anatomy knowledge and stuff to the pose. But it's still just a very basic standard, not standard, it's just a basic side pose. It's kind of boring. But it's good to learn. Like these poses, although they're kind of boring to look at, they're good poses to learn. And so yeah, those are the things you want to keep in mind when drawing this. Also, so when we get into the arm here, think about the anatomy for a second. So we have the deltoid here. Remember, the deltoid is going to attach somewhere right about here because we're seeing the kind of almost a side view of it. Like it's going to kind of, remember, attaches up here to the collarbone, comes down like this right here. So that's the overall shape. And right there, we need to draw the tube like that because you're going to have, this divides the tricep and the bicep, right? Because it's almost a side view, but it's not quite a side view. So we're not seeing, this isn't directly in the center. From a side view, deltoid comes like that. Then you have almost a direct cut in half here, like from the side view, but we're not quite view, but we're seeing some of the side view, but we're seeing some front view too. So that's why we're having more bicep here than tricep. Now there's another muscle between the tricep and bicep, which is the brachialis, which you'd have a little bit. We're not really going to see that, most people, unless you're really ripped. Now you can kind of think about the anatomy here though with the females. So typically females have more fat on their body distributed everywhere. And for a woman to get like defined kind of anything semblance to muscular arms, she has to be pretty thin and she has to basically work out a lot. She has to be pretty fit. It's harder for a female to have defined arms than it is for a man because we're naturally just have less fat. And that's because women through evolution have the fat there, so when they get pregnant, they have enough nutrients on their body to feed the baby if they didn't have enough food to get to. But one thing that happens if you think about the deltoid like this, and then you have the tricep and all this, if she were buff, is all that kind of gets covered with fat tissue. And what happens is you kind of get a shape like this often, where the shoulder just kind of comes right into the that shoulder kind of becomes one with the tricep, and so you kind of have an arm shape like this. This is pretty common, and then that right there would be where you'd have the part of this muscle here coming to the forearm like that. Then you'd be able to see a little bit of this underside here coming like this, and then you'd have a little bit of the bicep, which would be like that. So that's just a common shape to think about. If you want to make it thinner, you can. You can keep that kind of same shape, but you just kind of come in, with a thinner bicep, let's say like this. And then this part here would be like that. And then you guys still think about, what, how the fat will be, and, what you're going to see a little bit of, change here between that form and that form. This is going to be pretty much cylinder-like, so you guys think, where's the light coming from? And so I'm going to have the light kind of coming from the right, so we can kind of just put all that in shadow, and then part of that in shadow like that. And then that's the break in form, because now we're going into this little divot, and we get into these other forms here. So you got to think about all the forms and how the light hits them. So the back and underside of this breast will be in shadow. This one will be something like that. All this right here will kind of be in shadow as we come out and away, and all that will be in shadow. I'm just going to kind of shadow all that arm. This whole side will be more shadowed. This whole inside of the thigh, because it's turning away from the light, will be shadowed, but the light will be hitting the leg somewhere right here and somewhere like that. So all this part of the leg will be in shadow. Even this part here actually be a little bit in shadow because this is the part that's turning toward the light, and that's where the main highlight's going to be. We can think about the overall, this here has this little dent for the belly button, so that always has a little more shadow in it. And I think about the light is kind of coming like this, right? So it's kind of coming from the side, but also it's coming like toward us. So it's kind of facing and hitting. It's hitting from the top a little bit. It's hitting from the side, but it's also wrapped around this way toward us. So it's not hitting directly from the side view. It's a common lighting that I've kind of memorized to shade a lot of different things. It's my default lighting I go to. Everyone has that kind of default lighting that they like to use. And this is the lighting that I usually use. It's a really good like photographer setup too. And you can think about secondary light and bounce source after you add the first light source. So you got to think about this as almost like that, right? It's almost like two tubes coming down. You got to think about this shape. And you got to think about how much fat tissue is there. How does the fat tissue build up? So let's add a little bit of fat tissue here. Let's say that, so it makes the belly button kind of more like this, more horizontal because you have more fat build up here. And so this kind of comes down and in. So this part here is going to be in shadow because it kind of comes in, and then this part here, it goes like that, and this part here comes out again. So the light is actually going to hit all of this here, but it's not going to hit all of this down here, right? So all that's going to be in shadow. And then you got to think about this kind of like, is this going to be just like one shape that can happen with the fat tissue, or it can still kind of have a shape like that depending on how much fat we have here. Let's kind of go like that. We're not going to really add too much muscle, just that kind of basic shape where you can kind of start to see that kind of shape happen like that. So it's a little bit, maybe this right here, a bit more shadow because we're getting closer to, it turns, as it get here, you start to turn in and underneath and around more. So it starts, the less light hits in the crotch area as it starts to turn under. So you got to think about all that. And then all this right here is going to be shadow because it's turning away from the light. You know, like that. So it's just, this is how you shade from imagination. Just start basic like that, and then you can add secondary light sources if you want, like bounce light and stuff, or just a soft secondary light, and that would start to light up some of this. So then you go, okay, maybe I want to add some light back into here. Could also use the eraser. You want to come and just add some bounce light back into the shadows. And so that's going to start, you still have to think about the form, how does this light work and how does it, and it can only go, pretty much on this side where the shadow is. And just give a basic idea. And then you might even, strengthen this shadow here. This like line, it starts to look like a line, See, like this right here, it kind of starts to almost look like a line now because you have light on both sides, so that part becomes the darker part, if that makes sense. Because you have a little bit of light on this side and a little bit of light on this side, so then you have this strong terminator line now. Anyway, I'm not going to get too much more detail with this. Already my videos are long, but I don't know, they're not for everybody, but a lot of people like the more long form informative videos. It's not for everybody. I know a lot of people just like videos that don't really actually teach them anything. It's just like a fast entertaining video, but they don't really learn anything from it, because how can you learn anything from a quick 3-minute video? I mean, you can maybe learn a few little, like 2 little tips, but you don't really pick up too much from it. Like I never did. I learned from long form lectures. That's how I learned. Watched a lot of lectures, very expensive lectures though. Unfortunately, that's why I like to keep my stuff priced reasonably, because man, some of that stuff is just crazy expensive. I spent $900 on this one lecture. I forget the guy's name, but he does the anatomy, very, very popular, not anatomy, a very popular animation book. And I took the course version of that, the lecture course, and it was like $900. It was crazy expensive. for just, but I learned so much from it because he really goes into that long form and breaks down everything. I learned a lot about animation from that, so it was very well worth it. The amount of money you'd have to spend to go to a good school to learn that same information would have been so much more. But yeah, so that's it, folks. Thanks for watching, and hope you learned something. Keep at it, keep practicing. One thing I noticed, I think my arm, I don't like the shape of the arm now. I'd want to bring this arm in a little bit. I think I've pushed it out a little bit too far, and that's because I was zoomed in too much. It's good to always start where you can see the whole thing, like start more zoomed out where you can see everything you're drawing when you're doing the basic shapes. Make sure all that looks right first, and then you can kind of zoom in and start to add some of the details in anatomy. And always make sure to kind of zoom out every now and again and look at it. Or even have like this over here open on another monitor or something and make it larger so you can kind of see the full thing. And always have a full view of it as you're doing it, so you don't make those kind of mistakes. But yeah, just keep practicing. I'm telling you, the 3/4 view is so hard. It's hard to draw from reference, let alone from imagination. So you really, really got to practice it a lot. It took me a long time for it to all kind of finally start clicking to where I can draw 3/4 view from my imagination to where it looked right. And to draw a bunch of different poses too, like, don't just draw the basic neutral pose, draw some more. Just look at anything that kind of 3/4 view. For example, I'll show you some poses that I'm using in my course that will be available. So something like this, and this is something I actually bought the rights to from Legs Emporium. Really, really good backlog. So if you want to go check some of those out, very reasonably priced as well. Anyway, so this is good to practice from too because you can't see all the anatomy, so you have to kind of invent the anatomy in here. You got to kind of visualize where the breast would be, and how the collarbone would look and how all this would look. So having limited clothing really does help for practice because you have to imagine the anatomy that's not visible to you. But even stuff like this, right? It's not a neutral pose, but it is a 3/4 pose. You can see how this leg, I know it's coming in front, but even if it weren't, it's overlapping this leg quite a bit. See how this leg comes way up here and attaches behind like that, see? You have to think about that. So the crotch line here, the leg attaches behind the crotch line from this view, if that makes sense. Let me turn this down so I can show you what I'm talking about. So if you think about how this leg is coming, right? It's attaching back here because you have that part of the buttock muscle comes and attaches like this, right? So that's that leg back there. And the crotch line is right here like this. See that? And then this right here is that part of the leg comes like this. That's that upper part of the leg, and it kind of comes in like that, right? And then this leg is coming in front. But if we were to draw this pose a little different, this is another good exercise where you think about the pose that's there and then you draw something else. So let's go ahead and add some of this. This is a really higher res. I need to turn my pencil up here so it looks right. There we go. All right, so let's go like this, that right here, and then let's go like this, watch. So all this will be the same, but we're going to take this leg and pull it back now. So we know that we'll kind of have all that be the same here like that. This is where the leg is kind of attaching, so we're going to kind of just use that basic idea. And it comes like that. And let's say this leg is going to come back like this here. Right, so then love handle, and we're going to have the buttocks kind of come out a little bit because the leg is kind of coming back like this. So we're going to bring that butt out just a little bit. Let's say it's like that, right? And then this leg here would still be like this. Right, so all that would be the same. Boom, like that. So you can see that you would see this leg right here is coming around and behind. So you got to think about when you're drawing, draw through the form and think about where things would attach, right? So this would come and attach behind. But anyway, I have a whole bunch of photos of this model and another model that's in the course, that a bunch of different poses to look from, and there's a lot of stuff online too that I just can't just show on. I can't just use in my course without rights to it. But you guys can use it for personal studies. Just Google different things and go on DeviantArt and stuff and just use that as reference. All right, I'll see you next time. thumbs up and all that good stuff.